Good evening, everyone. This is Just Fine with the 2MK group. Today is a little bit different from usual, though not too different. We have two things on the agenda. The first is to go over the prototype of Kata 31 with Zangief-sama over here. So currently this uses the Zangief bot unaltered, and this is the cleanest version I think we have in our group so far. But that is something we'll discuss a little more in detail as we go on. Gauge settings should be set to maximum start for both his gauges. But you do not necessarily have to play with your life meter going down, but if you do, use that as the setting. So this is a very simple, on its face, kata. But like every kata, there is a bunch of tiny little interactions that make it complex. So as you can see, I am dashing in, doing my medium punch, and then dashing back out. The thing this is supposed to teach you, there's a few things, so let's start with the most basic thing. Every character has a different back and forward dash, and this, for beginners and those who are not quite silver yet, it may take them a while to get used to the concept of what your dash is for, as opposed to regular walking forward or jumping. For many characters, Zangief is definitely someone you will have to learn that particular skill, especially, for example, against Mika. Or, well, with Mika. Because Mika beats Zangief by being more mobile and essentially quicker than Zangief in a lot of ways. But she also has a lot of good options against Zangief with her dash. A lot of characters will have options for either what happens on the dash forward, or after what happens on the dash back and then dashing forward again. Because if you dash forward and dash back, this distance is not usually the same as where you first started. So learning that spacing can be quite important for the fundamentals of your footsie game. Now this isn't necessarily what the kata is designed to teach you, but it is the surface layer that leads to the deeper understanding. And it is a good, simple situation to set up to learn the concept of mental flexibility and planning your actions ahead of time. In fighting games, you will often need to think about what you need to do next before you do it. That is the base skill you need to get past a certain level in fighting games. Because otherwise, it's very hard to play the two-player game. So, this is the basic form of the kata I will give you, as we currently have it developed. First, you dash forward while thinking about your medium punch. You're going to do your medium punch. Now, what happens next is you do your medium punch, and then you're thinking of backdashing. Now, Zangief can do quite a few things, and Zangief Bot in particular is programmed to do a very few specific things in neutral after he gets hit. This could be a charging heavy punch, it could be a hop, it could be a heavy kick, it could be an SPD. There's lots of different things that Zangief can do at this range. And you need to think ahead of time what you're going to do after that backdash. Because otherwise you will not be prepared for whiff punishing Zangief. And this is a skill needed to beat basically every Zangief there is. Zangief is beaten by either setting him up in a situation where he gets whiff punished a lot, or where he is in a bad wake-up situation. But both skills are necessary at the higher levels. And then, after you do your forward dash, your medium punch, it gets blocked, you back dash, you forward dash again. And the reason you do that is because now you are in another footsie range, depending on how far back your backdash takes you versus how far forward your forward dash takes you, as well as how far back your medium punch takes you. Now, every single Mika main should have done similar training, or if they have not, they should do similar training in order to get used to the knockback property of Mika's 5 medium punch having been changed. What this does is it changes the neutral situation for Mika quite a bit, and it makes it harder for certain attacks to connect. But, for example, at certain ranges, our Mika can do forward dash, medium punch, back dash, forward dash into command throw. So now you know the basics of this. It is a kata, like many katas, that requires you to understand your spacing and what to do at the various spots in your spacing. And how to plan ahead, and what you should be planning ahead. So, as this is a Sandbag Casuals, I will be essentially sandbagging and grinding this situation here against actual players. To see not only what other people react to, but also what situations it leaves me with and what kind of emotional state it leaves opponents in. This is for a grappler who relies on reads and conditioning people, a very important thing to learn with this type of skill.
Round one. Fight!
This is a little laggy, but, well, I was about to say it's not the kind that should bother me, but that was definitely not good. The thing that this should teach you, the kata, is also where to stand relative to your opponent in order to get the multi-threat spacings. Yeah, this is too bad. It said 5 bars. I don't know.
Round Final round.
Alright, this person is relying quite a bit on me not anti-airing them, as usual. Seems like that neutral jump is also their first thought when it comes to knockdown situations. Anyway, not rematching that one. Although it seemed to improve a little bit, I don't trust it. It says 5 bars, I don't know. Anyway, it should teach you where to stand at. Not just, oh, this will give me a spacing most optimal for my best punish off of 5 medium punch after my dash. It should also, if you grind it enough, teach you different situations spacing wise after the second forward dash. Like that. So I stand at this range against Zangief a lot. The reason I do is because if Zangief walks forward, I can get a max range heavy shooting Peach to get me in, confuse him, all that sort of stuff. And I can generally use Mike at that range. But this is not really optimal for beating Zangief. It's good for zoning Zangief and generally staying away from him and forcing him to come in on to Mika. But not so much if you are trying to beat Zangief by putting him in stressful situations where he is unsure what you're going to do. Because many of the ranges that the forward dash puts you at are also applicable to throw. Especially for our Mika.
Let my beauty intoxicate you. Round 1. Fight!
I approve of that name for Vega. Looks like this Vega could use a little Armika matchup knowledge. So hopefully they get something out of this fight. He's doing a good job of controlling my range. Stayed on Mike a little too long.
Final round. Fight.
I'm still getting used to this V trigger,
You win.
but the reason it's taking me so long to is mostly because, unlike Call Nadeshko, the steel chair is not something I'm used to having in terms of a feeling of what it's supposed to do for me.
Round one.
A lot of people have... He really needs to stop wearing his claw. I think that's his main problem. Pushing buttons a lot on Wake Up, which is fair against our Mika, honestly.
Round two. Fight.
Well, nice combo. Alright, that was my fault.
My beauty is unshakable. Final round. Fight.
You know, I think I do like JP Vega a bit more. Second, I have the life lead. Why am I chasing you? Yeah, he really likes wake up buttons. Keep trying to tell him to drop his claw, but he doesn't seem to get the picture. I'll let Nadeshko do the dirty work for me.
You win.
Anyway, Claw is a little difficult to do it on because Claw has a bit longer reaching normals in neutral. So after your backdash, and Mika has a fairly decently short backdash compared to some characters, he can hit her with his claw. And generally, most claw are trying to keep you out, whereas Zangief really doesn't mind if you're in. So the headspace is a little different. So one of the main things that I have noted while testing this out a little, I played it a little bit last night and sometime a little bit before a stream just to refresh myself a bit, was that after Mika's bread and butter combo off of 5 medium punch, after the shooting peach knockdown, the opponent is basically left at the perfect range for Mika to dash in on. So one of the reasons I hit confirm into my 5 medium punch into heavy punch into shooting peach is because of that. And it has the added bonus. Oh, I messed that up. This Ryu seems to be fairly decent in terms of practicing this.
Round 2. Fight.
He seems to currently have 3 main reactions to blocking my dash in 5 medium punch. Generally, he will backdash or walk backwards. he will
You lose.
do a crouching medium punch. And I forget what the third one is, but it will come up if he rematches me.
Round one. Fight. Round two. Fight. Hadouken! Hadouken!
He is very good at whiff punishing me. He's doing a very good job of keeping me out of the range where I can do more than just the max spacing reaction for the 5 medium punch knockback off of the block. If I backdash at the farthest range of a blocked 5 medium punch, on my dash forward, I am left with very little to do in terms of mix-ups.
You lose.
And he seems to not have wanted anything to do with that situation. So, back to Zangief bot here. So, where does that leave us? On the ground, apparently. Now, there are some very rare instances against Zangief bot. Do I care about this? I guess. There are very rare instances. Well, I'll go over that when we're fighting Zangief. If Bison is a king. Would that make Ed a prince?
Round one. Fight.
Now, Ed is a very difficult character to practice this against. Because Ed basically is a boxer. This whole kata is very much like boxing. And because of that, he thinks on a similar level. He too is looking to get in and out, in and out. So Ed will adjust his spacing a lot more than most characters, for most styles of Ed anyway. Oh no. There you go. Progressing. Ah ha 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 ha.
Fight.
This Ed seems very vulnerable to being whiff punished after the second forward dash.
You lose.
But this is mostly because one of our Mika's main whiff punishes, which is somewhat unique to her in the range and way the hitbox works, is her slide.
Round one. Fight.
Oh, I didn't know she could slide under that. That's good to know. That must be really precise timing though, because I know Psycho Snatcher has a really long active frame timing.
You lose.
Right, so Zangief bot. So in very rare instances against Zangief bot, because of the property the cancel property of all of her standing punches, our Mika is able to cancel into a shooting peach, even on an armor absorb. Now, this is not always a good idea. That's not close. But if you have meter for the EX peach, you can essentially cancel into EX Peach and break his armor. But you have to hit really early with this. It's basically on a hard read, or when you have gotten Zangief to get used to needing to throw the heavy punch to discourage your dashing in. Like that. That was not a perfect cancel, but it does demonstrate that the situation is possible. Ha 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 ha! I will keep that in mind. So I suggest to you, if you are using the prototype of this kata, to look for similar things that your character might have. Not all characters are blessed, as Mika is, with good cancels for multi-hitting moves out of their medium punch. But you might have something that might be useful depending on what character you play. Oh, perfect. Let's see how this works against a blue cyclone.
Is using their main character.
And it's a main character Zangief, even better. Now, Zangief has a bit more limited mobility than a lot of other characters. So it's easier to maintain situations He likes jumping a lot. We'll have to keep in mind.
Round 2. Fight.
Unfortunate.
Final round. Fight. You lose.
So hopefully he rematches me here, since he is fairly decent practice. He is using V-Trigger 1, which we do not use for the kata, mostly because the vacuum hands tends to put you in a situation where you're unable to really do
Round one.
much about the spacing, and it's just generally not that helpful to Zangief's bot's overall flow. Right. Wins that particular situation.
Round two. Fight.
He uses his jab quite a bit to interrupt most oncoming pressure, and this is something you will see occasionally against Zangief bot. However, it does not come up quite as frequently.
You lose.
So that Zangief did remind me that I'm sort of over-focusing a little incorrectly, in that I'm focusing on the first step of the kata, which is the dash forward. But as I mentioned in the opening, a big part of this is whiff punishing Zangief and setting up the situation where you can whiff punish him. So, for example, I did mention a little earlier in the stream that Mika had an interesting way of whiff punishing a lot of Zangief stuff with with her crouching heavy kick. But sometimes the heavy kick is not necessarily the best button to press. Sometimes her crouching heavy punch is a bit better because of the forward movement of the hitbox. And it does put her spacing-wise a little further. So this actually brings up a good point that I've been training a lot on the past month or so, and that is mindfulness. This kata requires you to make very directly mindful decisions at each step, and if you do not make those decisions, your autopilot can sort of destroy the benefit of the kata. And this is true for a lot of kata-based things, because katas are about figuring out what decisions you want to make at all sorts of different situations. But if you autopilot, you're selecting by default a singular solution.
Round 2. Fight!
Dead.
You lose. Round 1. Fight!
So this Akuma likes keeping this spacing, and it's very similar to the spacing I was showing you earlier with Zangief. which was sort of a keep out zoning sort of position. And this makes the kata difficult to practice on this player because it allows Akuma to keep the terms of engagement such that dashing is basically not going to be very useful. So how should I adapt to that? Basically, given what the kata is supposed to teach, what I should mostly be focusing on is where his spacing is and how I can well, that's done quickly, but the point would be, if I were to continue against this opponent, would be that I could start focusing on when I can backdash in a way that makes him whiff his own approach and then punish it from there, cutting a few steps off since he basically was not allowing that situation to occur and I did not have control enough of his own spacing. But let me walk you through a little bit here, possible ways you can end up autopiloting. So, first of all, the initial dash itself requires a bit of attention to Zangief's own rhythm. Because he's a bot, obviously he will repeat a few different things. But most opponents at the lower levels will do their own thing they have learned is good for them to do in neutral. You saw it with that previous Zangief I fought. You saw it with the Ryu I fought earlier. And to a lesser extent the Ed, although he was a little bit better at varying what he did. So that is the first thing, and signs that you might be autopiloting your dash forward there is if you run into his lariat in particular, and to some degree the later end of his charging heavy punch, since that does take quite a while to start up. You should mentally have understood that was occurring and that was going to happen. The reason why this particular step is easy to end up autopiloting is because, first of all, it is the first action in the kata. And dashing itself, for many people, can feel like pressing a button. Because you are doing a double tap forward in order to execute the dash. So it can feel like an offensive option in your repertoire that you do in neutral to have a offensive event to occur. And if you are focused on making that happen, you may enthusiastically throw yourself, constantly trying to get to the next part, the more interesting part, when you are actually hitting Zanget. And that is basically just a type of interaction that can happen in many different situations, not just this kata. But it's important to look out for when you are doing that sort of thing, because if you autopilot your offense too much, you can be neglecting your footsie spacing a bit. Alright. Got the mirror match going here. Well, not quite a mirror match. It looks like they are sticking with Call Nadeshko. I slightly prefer V-Trigger 1 for Mika. However, I'm still trying to understand her second V-Trigger, so...
Fight!
Hopefully the lag doesn't get too bad.
Fight!
Now, you might have noticed that I have been doing a dash in and a throw occasionally, instead of a dash in punch. This is because of what I alluded to a little earlier in the stream about the mix-up option. Mika is blessed with the fact that her medium punch is the same amount of startup frames as her throw. And it doesn't look like this lag is going to clear up any bit. Oh. 1 bar. I wish I didn't push that button.
Round 1.
Oh well.
Fight.
Maybe it'll bounce back. Yeah, this isn't too bad. And then I said something. I should not have said that. Anyway, so since we got plenty of time here, the mix-up option of this is sort of important for Mika because it forces the opponent to push buttons upon dashing in. But once you have that occurring, then you don't even need the dash. Okay, that's just annoying. But yeah, go ahead, dude. Have 50 fight money.
Round 2.
My fault for not paying a little more attention before I hit play again. Oh, there you go. Oh, nope. You won't even need the dash forward per se, because again, like I was saying at the very beginning, the point of this kata is more so to teach you sequential planning. If this happens and I do this move, I'm going to do this next. So there is a second autopilot tendency I want to talk about that can occur in this kata. And it is actually not necessarily an action, but a mental autopilot. So once you have dash forward, let's say that you have recognized that, oh, Zangief is going to whiff this 5 heavy punch, and I can jump in with my dash here. Well, not jump, that was poor phrasing, but point being, you can dash in and land the 5 medium punch for your punish. Now, what can happen here is you can autopilot the hit confirm. And you will notice that happening if you're looking for it. As I am demonstrating here, I'm not thinking too much about this. Now, if you always do your same punish, that situation will get set up. Now, notice how I'm at a very different spacing from my normal bread and butter combo. I am much closer to Zangief, and I am not even at a range where dashing is useful. In fact, I could probably just stand there and defend. But Zangief has way more options at that spacing to hit in neutral and stop me from doing anything whatsoever, and allowing him to advance forward. Interestingly, it seems that the blocked version of this matches up with the shoving Zangief into the corner version of the spacing. The next thing you want to look out for in terms of autopiloting is once you get back to this space, once you have performed the backdash. Now, the base form of the kata is, as we discussed, dash forward, 5 medium punch, dash back, dash forward again. But much like the first initial dash forward, if you choose the dash back or dash forward again, there is the potential for you to run into some of Zangief's moves. So this goes back to a similar principle from the first, where if you watch what Zangief is doing, if you play the two-player game, even though he is a bot, he's still our training partner, right? Generally, when you are far back, when you are at a backdash's distance away from Zangief, you do have a little more time to think, and that is beneficial to what we are trying to teach here. Anyway. That would be correct. No, Kanzuki. Generally, if he does like a crouching light punch or is just sort of sitting in place there, that would be the best situation to do that in. And that's sort of what I wanted to get at in terms of the autopilot. If you notice that you are running into things or that Zangief has jumped over your head, you may want to pay a little more attention to what Zangief is doing on your way backdashing. This is not a perfect way to do your planning, but if you are just starting out training this skill, it is a decent slightly low pressure way of learning to look for your options for your character. So, for example, right there, this is not a good range to do this move. I can do that a few times and miss, but eventually, if I'm still doing the move, and it's whipping, I may want to think about why I am hitting my crouch heavy kick again. So, let's go back into battle now that we have noted the last few points here as to where you want to be careful when training the prototype of this kata. And do a little fighting before we end the night and hopefully work on advancing all the little things in this kata. Well, I have not fought a Zeku in forever. Looks like they are hoping that Noctis is not just a Tekken DLC character, but also a Street Fighter one.
Let's party if you think you can keep up.
Round one. Fight! Round two. Fight!
Now, at least for Mika, something I have been noticing is that the dash-in range is very similar to where a lot of characters get their jump-ins at. So there is an extra stack of pressure on your mental thinking here.
You win!
Where you need to decide, okay, should I be dashing now? Or would that be a disadvantage to me? Now, luckily, against some characters such as Ryu, dashing at that range actually isn't too bad a response to his jump in. And it can also prevent you from being crossed up a little bit as well. There is a different version of Zangief bot that is a little less clean in terms of being put in, but it has a little more frequent of jumps. So we might take a little further look into the benefits of that. Given that specific issue. Now, Cammy is going to be pretty interesting to do this training on. Also, that costume is amazing. Well, hopefully the lag doesn't show up on this stage. This stage is a little laggier than some.
For those who I wish to protect, I will fight.
Round one. Fight.
Alright, they seem to be a little bit defensive here. And much like the Ed and Ryu we had fought earlier, this is going to be a little bit difficult given their tendency to walk backward. And Cammy in particular has a lot more threat at further ranges compared to most characters.
Final round. Fight.
I feel like I don't want to backdash at certain ranges against this person, since Cammy's back walk speed is actually pretty good, especially compared to Mika's forward walk speed. So we're getting pretty close to our standard time for ending our stream. So since this is quite a lot to think about, honestly, and this type of training is honestly done better in bursts, I'm sort of pushing myself a bit here. So don't feel strange if you try to do this training and after quite a bit, after like half an hour or so, you're just abnormally exhausted. That's kind of normal. Oof. But we will continue to refine the kata a bit. It certainly seems to be helping me think about my forward dash a little better. Both as a movement option and as a tool for offense. And honestly, pointing out where our Mika in particular, I tend to autopilot more than any other character I play. So this is going to be a good way for disciplining me into not autopiloting as much and planning ahead what I want to do before I even take my action. So, you can check out our other katas that are completed and developed at 2-mk.org/katas, where we have a lot more information. And for our bots, such as Zangief bot over here, we have them at 2-mk.org/bots. If you have any questions at all about the kata or this kata 31 prototype, or suggestions on better explanations, or anything you have found in your own training, feel free to contact us at our contact page on the 2-mk.org website. You may or may not see this kata again on Friday. We're still working out the plans. So, I believe that is all. This is Just Fine with 2-mk, signing out. And keep training your muscles.